All right, moving on to 5.3, we are talking predominantly about circles. So let's remind ourselves of the equations that we need for circles. All right, so the area of a circle is equal to pi times r squared, and the circumference of a circle, which is really the same thing as perimeter, is 2 pi r. And we're going to leave all of our answers in terms of pi. We are not going to follow any directions that talk about to the nearest tenth, etc. Okay, so looking at the first one, we want to find the circumference. We're going to use the formula that I just said, which is 2 pi r, which is, so in our case, 2 times pi, and r is 12. Okay, pi, we're going to pretend like it's a variable. It's really not going to change. So we're dealing with these numbers, 2 times 12, and that's 24. And I'm going to leave pi in my answer. That is the answer. All right, next one, the diameter. Now, some people rewrite the circumference formula. We know that the diameter is actually 2 radii. And so if we take the 2 and the r right here, some people say the circumference is just 2r, which is d times pi, or pi d. Some people write that. So if we have the diameter here, we can say the circumference is actually this number, 5 times pi. All right, numbers 3 and 4. Once again, we're going to ignore this nearest tenth. We want to find the area of each circle. So the area is equal to pi r squared, which is pi times, for this one, number 3, 8 squared. We're going to square 8, 64, and we usually stick pi behind that, so 64 pi. For number 4, we do need to take this d and turn it into r. So r is actually half of the diameter, which is 4.5. Or some people write it as 9 halves. Plug it into our formula, pi times radius, that's 4.5 squared. And feel free, if you want to use your calculator, you can go ahead and use this. And we can see that 4.5 squared is 20.25. So 20.25 pi. If you had left it like a fraction, which you are welcome to do so, you're going to end up with 9 halves squared times pi, which is 81 over 4 pi. That's just an alternative. All right, number 5. We're looking at a circle, but we want the area of just the shaded region. And when I see this, I see a big circle minus a little circle. So we've got the big circle area. We need to find that circle. And that's going to be pi times that radius, which is 12 squared, which is the same thing as 144 pi. We've got in the center, we've got this small circle. And that radius right there is 5, so that's pi times 5 squared, or 25 pi. So in order to get just the shaded region, we're going to take that big circle and subtract the little circle in the middle. So we're going to take 144 pi minus 25 pi. And when we go ahead and do this, we are going to get 119 pi. All right, moving on to number 6. What I see here is I have a square, and it's missing the circle in the middle. So if I want to find the area of this, I'm going to take the area of the square, right? And how am I going to find that out? Well, here I see the circle is a radius of 4, which means this is also 4, and this is also 4. So that makes the side of the circle 8. It's the diameter of that circle. And so if it's a square, the area is going to be base times height, 8 times 8, which is 64. Okay, now I also need the area of my circle, the white area in here that we're missing, and we want to subtract it away. So we've got pi times my radius, that's 4 squared. 4 squared is 16, so we've got 16 pi. Now we're going to leave our answers in terms of pi, so I'm just going to take that square, 64, minus that circle, 16 pi. All right, next one, number 7. A circular garden has an area of 616 square feet. What is the diameter? Okay, so here we have a circle, and they're telling me the area is 616. So I'm going to set that number, 616, equal to the formula, which is pi times r squared. All right, so we're going to have to resort to our calculator here. I'm going to divide both sides by pi to get rid of it. And so I end up with 616 over pi. I'm using my calculator to get a number there. 616 divided by pi gave me 196.08 equals r squared. To get this r by itself, I'm going to have to do the opposite of squaring, which is the square root. And that means I'm going to take the square root of this 196.08. So the square root of that number gives me that r is 14.0. So 14. And if I go ahead and want to find the diameter, we said before that the diameter was 2 times r. So in our case, that's 2 times 14, or 28 feet. All right. Moving on, back to 6 again. We've got the same kind of problem as before. We have a big circle, and we need to take away this little circle. So the area of the big circle is going to be pi times 14 squared. And 14 squared is 196. The little circle is going to be pi times 6 squared, which is 36 pi. And we're actually going to go ahead and subtract them because it's going to be the big circle minus the little circle. So 196 minus 36 is actually 160 pi. All right, number 7. We've got a lot going on here. We've got a box, missing a circle, but we also have a triangle on the end. So let's look here. So here's the box. The square right here is going to have an area of 8 times 8, just for the square, which is 64. And what we're missing is this circle whose radius is 4. So the circle is going to have pi times 4 squared, that radius. So we got 64 minus 16 pi, which I believe is what we had above. But now we're adding on a triangle on the side, right? We're adding on the triangle. And so the area of the triangle is 1/2 base times height. The base right here, if this whole thing is 11 and the top is 8, that means the base is 3. The height we know is 8. So 1/2 3 times 8, half of 24 is actually 12. So I'm going to take my box minus, or my square minus my circle, 64 minus 16 pi, but I'm going to add 12 for my triangle. And I can actually combine the 64 and the 12, and I'm going to get 76 minus 16 pi. All right, last but not least, I've got a semicircle. I've got half a circle here. The radius of my circle is 6. So my area of my whole circle would be pi times 6 squared, or 36 pi. But we only have half of a circle, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to divide it by 2. And that gives me 18 pi. So there's my answer for number 8.